There's a 2003 study by the Journal of Retailing and Consumer Services that found that adopting a minimalist lifestyle can save you a lot of money because minimalists adopt a prudent stance toward consumption. So you're not spending on the frivolous. You're a very intentional spender now. So minimalism isn't anti-spending, but it's just pro-intentional spending. Shopping isn't a hobby anymore. We're not just throwing stuff toward money because we're trying to keep up with the Joneses. And you can really break that cycle that's causing a lot of your consumer debt when you have that mindset shift.
This is StRest. I'm Kerstin Lindquist, health coach, author, and Emmy award-winning TV host. I've committed to helping people reduce stress through impressive health science, attainable mindset change, and biblical truth. Let's have a real conversation with zero judgment and endless solutions that you can use. You aren't alone. You can do this. Let me help you reduce stress and make room for rest. All right, this is a sticky subject that we're going into next. How cluttered is your life, your house, your mind? How much stuff do you have? I want to help you because there is a direct relationship between how cluttered your exterior area is and the stress that you're feeling inside and your ability to be able to hear the Lord. I just started doing this myself after listening to all of this wisdom from Julia Ubbenga. I started throwing out things like coffee mugs that I didn't really need and kind of paring down my wardrobe. And I hope you're going to do the same. I had a wonderful conversation with Julia Ubbenga. She's the creator of the popular blog, Rich in What Matters. And she has a new book that you have to get. It's called Declutter Your Heart and Your Home. Her online projects, which is how I found her, have attracted over 25 million views. And in today's episode, we're going to help you let go of inner and outer clutter and reorder your lives around what matters most. Let's go. Well, I was just telling Julia before we started and press record that I have been walking around over the last couple of days, throwing things away and decluttering and apologizing to my family, but not really, all because it's research to talk to this amazing woman who is all about how we can kind of de-stress our lives through decluttering and living a little bit more minimalistically. Do I have that all right,
Yeah,
Julia?
absolutely.
It's so great to have you here. I'm thrilled to talk to you and learn from you. I want to dive right in because, as you know, the name of the podcast is StRest. We're talking about surrendering stress and finding rest and being able to hear the Lord a little bit more. How can decluttering or living a more minimalistic life add to having less stress and
Yeah,
anxiety?
that's a great question. And first, thanks for having me on. I'm just so excited to be here talking with you today. And it's so important to ask that question. How does clutter affect our stress levels in the home? Because we're living in a society right now that has more stuff, more possessions than any other society in the history of the world. And the average home now has over 300,000 things in it. And housing sizes have more than doubled over the last 50 years. And so it's really becoming a problem. And I don't know if people are always that aware of it, that it is. And really, we've created living environments that cause us to spend our days, a lot of us, to spend our days in a state of chronic stress. And so I've been there. I've lived in that state of overwhelm at home, and it's not fun. I haven't always been a minimalist, pretty far from it, actually. And for years, I amassed more and more stuff. I racked up $40,000 in consumer debt. I owned tons of stuff, but I wasn't happy. Soon, this discontent, this restlessness, it led to depression. And I had this rock bottom moment where I called out to God, and he gave me a verse from Luke chapter 12. He said, "Your life does not consist of possessions. Be rich in what matters." And so that led to me letting go of 75% of my stuff, and I stopped buying more of it because I realized I didn't need more of it. It wasn't making me happy. And so for me, minimalism was a springboard out of chronic exhaustion and overwhelm. And I tell more about it in my new book, Declutter Your Heart and Your Home, How a Minimalist Life Yields Maximum Joy. And also in the first chapter of the book, I mention a landmark study on stress and clutter. And it's just so interesting. It's out of the UCLA. It was done at the Center on Everyday Lives of Families. And so they studied 32 Los Angeles families, 32 homes, for 4 years, from 2001 to 2005. They counted the number of things in their home. They had participants do video tours of their home, talking about their clutter. And then they measured the cortisol levels in the study's participants' salivas. And they found that moms who described their home as messy or chaotic. They had higher cortisol levels than moms who described their homes as restorative. So for these women in these cluttered homes, their cortisol levels, they stayed high all day instead of tapering off in the evening like we would expect them to. And that led to poor sleep. It led to increased anxiety. And so they concluded that that those stress women feel at home, it's tied to the amount of belongings that they and their families have collected. And I think this is so important for us to know because clutter it's stealing our joy. It's causing us stress. And when we declutter our home environments, we are really changing our physiology. Our cortisol levels are lowering and we feel less stressed and less anxious because of it.
And I think we can test that theory right away if somebody were to, after they listen to this podcast or while they're listening to this podcast, organize a drawer or clean out a
Hmm.
closet and the way that you feel after that. And I think that oftentimes when we are so overwhelmed in our lives, whether it is stress from work or from family, from anything, we find ourselves stopping and organizing something. And you're like, why am I doing this in the middle of this overwhelm of my life? And it's because your brain and your body are eager to be able to have some type of calm and control over something in your life.
Absolutely. You do feel completely different. It's like this energy shift within you, and you do feel like you have a little control over something. But when you keep going and you declutter your whole living environment and you just make a space that supports you, your mindset changes, your health changes. The ripple effects are incredible.
So cortisol that Julia was talking about is super, super important because that is a hormone that rises first thing in the morning, especially for women. And it's great. It gets us up and out of bed and it gets us going. And you want to have cortisol, but you don't want to keep cortisol high throughout the day and throughout your life because that leads to a lot of chronic health conditions that we have. It also is harder for us when you're in perimenopause and menopause. It leads to that anxiety and overwhelm, leads to belly fat as well. So we talk a lot about trying to reduce that cortisol. And what I hear you saying, Julia, is that we can reduce our cortisol, not necessarily needing to go for a run, which I always recommend exercise, or eating something different, but just by decluttering.
That's what the research is showing. Absolutely.
So, how can decluttering kind of your physical space help you declutter your mental space and lead to more joy?
Yeah. So for the mental space, if we're looking like at a mental and emotional well-being, there's some interesting facts about clutter that just show how it negatively impacts our well-being beyond just the cortisol levels we've just talked about. So people who sleep in cluttered rooms are more likely to have sleeping problems, studies have shown. People with extremely cluttered homes are 77% more likely to be overweight than people who have decluttered homes. And there's been studies too that show people are more likely to make unhealthy food choices in a cluttered environment.
Wow, okay, just stop right there. Like that is right there. Overweight and make unhealthy food choices. That alone is a prescription for decluttering. Why aren't doctors recommending this?
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I just think that you just feel so much better and then you're gonna make better choices. And there's also a part of decision fatigue is a thing too, that when we have fewer things in our home, like say we have a very simplified wardrobe, we don't have to spend our decision making abilities on deciding what to wear in the morning. Studies show we only have so much willpower, so much decision making ability. And so if we use it all in the morning, deciding what to wear, deciding, where to put things where things are, if we don't have things like a system in place by the end of the day, we are going to reach for those cookies instead of the healthy snack. Our willpower is gone. So that's another way that decluttering can help. But also, as far as your mental and emotional well-being, there's a really interesting study really recently out of Yale that showed that our brains expend so much energy trying to ignore the visual chaos in a cluttered home. So clutter is making us feel exhausted and scattered at home simply by being in eyesight. Also, if we're looking at just our relationships and our emotional well-being, 47% of couples argue about the clutter in their homes on a weekly basis, which definitely takes an emotional toll.
This is all mind blowing information, but it all makes so much
Yeah.
sense. My family and I were missionaries for a time. It took me and my three kids, and we went down to Mexico. It was a lifelong dream, a calling of mine. And we served in a very impoverished area for about 4 months. And that definitely changed the trajectory of my life. I came back, reassessed everything. And it's part of the reason where I am what I'm doing right now. intersection of health science meets biblical truth. One of the things I talk about all the time down there is I had 3 pairs of pants and 6 tops and 2 pairs of shoes. And I was happier than I have ever been. I was literally in a poverty stricken area working at a medical clinic. We were happier. We slept better. Our relationships were better. Everything was simpler and easier, and our stress levels were lower. And I always go back to that time when I'm looking at my closet now and seeing this it is pretty obscene. Nobody should look at my closet. It's crazy how much I have and how frustrated I get sometimes with it when I had 6 shirts and 3 pairs of pants and I was happier.
Yeah, you weren't focused on your stuff then, you weren't distracted by your stuff then, you were focused on things that brought you joy, serving others. And that happens when we own less stuff too. We're not focused on buying our next possession. We're not focused on maintaining things or organizing things. We're focused on things that bring us more joy because we have more space in our lives for that.
Okay, so tell me how, because I feel like I'm pretty good at throwing stuff away, kind of to a fault. Sometimes my family will be like, "Really? Are you really?" I have an easier time getting rid of things, but I know that there's a lot of emotion around that. So what are your tricks? How do we change our brain in this area?
Is if you mean like how would you get started decluttering or yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
what I found is that the most effective way to get started decluttering is to look at the categories of your stuff and realize what is causing you the most stress. Because what I read as I started researching minimalism is that the best way to start was in a contained space, maybe a non-sentimental area like a kitchen cabinet or a bathroom drawer. But what I found when I tried that is that I would have a nice organized drawer, but then I'd turn around and I'd still have just these piles of kid stuff, kids' clothes everywhere, kids' toys. We have 4 kids. We're expecting our fifth. And so kids' clothes at the time were the bane of my existence. They were just everywhere. And so I realized that for me to be efficient in my decluttering, to make an actual dent that made a functional difference in my life, I needed to start in the area that caused me the most stress. So what I would recommend listeners do is just kind of step back, observe your home, and write out the different clutter categories that are causing you the most stress, and then actually go ahead and rate them. 1 is not much stress, 10 is a ton of stress. And then start at the top, whatever area that is, go ahead and dive in, dive in that way. Start with your most stressful clutter category, because that's going to then lead you to your next one, because momentum builds upon momentum. When I started with kids' clothes, we went from having piles of clothes that I stuffed in the crib and just didn't have a system at all to having just a very, very small wardrobe for my kids, and they could take care of their own clothes. And my stress levels just from that lightened a lot too.
So Julia is expecting her 5th child at any time now. So we're so blessed that she's here to share this with us. With 5 kids and tackling something that is child related first, I would think that that would hold a lot of emotion. I can't imagine throwing away like my baby's onesies and things like that. How do you get over that part of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. We think about there's a lot of biases that hold us back from letting go of our stuff. There's cognitive biases, there's emotional biases. Cognitively, there's like the mere exposure effect. It means just when you see something often, you're more likely to keep it. Your brain thinks it belongs to you. So if you're exposed to it often, you're going to want to keep it. So one thing, and then like I said, there's emotional biases too, right? Like the fear or the guilt, or you think you're going to need something just in case for the future. So one thing I really like to do is to box up items and then get them out of my site for a while. So maybe 3 months. Don't declutter it right away. Don't donate it right away. You can box up the kids' clothes, put them in storage for 3 months. And what happens with our brain then is when we revisit them after a period of time of not having seen them, we realize that we don't need them. There's not that emotional connection as much. There's not that exposure effect going on that we've seen these daily. We think they're part of our lives. And it's much easier to let go of them after we put them away for a while.
It's so true. I'm brought back to when my mother passed, and it's been 3 years now. I took all of her clothes out of the home as we were cleaning up, and I was going to donate them. And I remember being at the place where you donate and sitting there and being in tears and just thinking, I can't do this. I can't donate her clothes. it was too soon for me at that time, I think. So I brought them I hung some of them up downstairs in a closet, and I put some of them away kind of in the basement. And as I've gone to revisit them, it's definitely gotten easier. First of all, the time, but also you're right, that's not her. I have pictures, I have memories, and those clothes aren't her. So it's become easier because they're not kind of in my face all the time.
Exactly. And then, yeah, sentimental items are difficult. Like the clothing like that are sentimental because when you see them, you have that feeling, those memories of your mom, but you have those memories anyway. You don't need the clothing for those to be drawn up. And often when we do see certain pieces of clothing in our closet, they do trigger emotional responses. And so that could be sadness. You could be seeing those clothes and feeling sadness. And I bet that's not how your mom would want you to feel every day either.
Exactly. That's so true, to flip the brain that way. Whereas looking at them reminds me of her, and so I don't want to get rid of them. But really, looking at them reminds me of her, but in a sad way. So I should get rid of
Exactly.
them because that's not how I should be thinking of
Yeah.
her. That's
And you can
amazing.
always take pictures of them if you wanna make a little, photo album on your phone of mom's clothes, and then if you do feel called to flip through them, you can go and look through them. So you could still see them if you wanted to, but they wouldn't be just there dictating your emotions on a daily basis.
Do you have any kind of, when you're helping people through this process of decluttering and becoming a minimalist, do you have any kind of benchmarks of you should only have 4 coffee cups and you should only have 3 pairs of pants, or is it really vary?
That's a great question. So I think it really varies. I think that minimalism looks so different for everyone else based on their lifestyle. Each person is going to have a very different experience, keep a different number of things. I think that, definitely I encourage people to keep less than they think they need because often we think we need more than we actually do, but there's no prescriptive number. And I think that's one of the misconceptions about minimalism too, is that kind of turns people off to it. They're like, well, I can only own 4 coffee mugs. That's not for me. I'm not gonna be a minimalist. But really, minimalism is about making space for what matters by removing what doesn't. And so if you love coffee mugs, own 10 coffee mugs. If you have people over for coffee all the time, based on your lifestyle, you're gonna wanna own more coffee mugs. But then somebody else is going to not. So really, it's something that fits your lifestyle, and it's about making space for what matters. And if you're counting your stuff, you're missing the point of minimalism anyway. 'Cause a lot of it isn't even about your stuff. It's about living an intentional life, and it's about aligning your life with your values and what matters to you and making space in your life to do that.
I think many of us remember, I don't even know how long ago it was now, the whole Marie Kondo craze, which was good. It was good. It's not like it was a bad thing. But you held something and you're like, does this bring me joy, to decide? Do you have that? Like if I'm holding a coffee mug or a vase, or what do I ask myself if I know that I should get rid of it?
Gosh, there's all types of questions you can ask yourself. Sure, you can ask if it brings you joy. That's maybe not for everybody. There's been even, like, really crazy questions like, "If my dog would poop on this, would I keep it? Or would I clean it off and keep it, or would I throw it in the trash?" Anything like that. It's just what you wanna do is realize, like, "Is this really serving me in this season? Is it something that's adding value to my life, or is it detracting from it? Is it stressing me out?"
What about the pieces that I bought this and never used it? I bought this and never wore
Mhm.
it.
That's for your aspirational self. There's a lot of stuff that we buy for our aspirational self. Like, I'm going to wear this someday, or I'm going to buy this guitar because I'm going to play the guitar. And then I never do. And when we keep things for the person that we think we might be, we're not living as the person we currently are. So it's distracting us from our present life. And when we think about, God too, he meets us in the present moment. And so if we're keeping all the stuff that's distracting us from the present moment, I think that it can have an effect on our spiritual lives as well. So I think it's really important to let go of that stuff that we're not currently using, that we're not currently needing, and make space for the person we are called to be.
You touched on this a little bit, but I'd love for you to kind of talk more. How can decluttering and living in a more minimalistic way get you closer to the Lord or allow you to hear him better?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in my book, I talk about how the state of our homes often reflects the state of our souls. And in the book, I've divided it into 3 sections. And so the first section looks at like laying the foundation of decluttering and decluttering the soul. So each section of the book has a part that focuses on an inner home and an outer home. The outer home would be the foundation in section 1, and the inner home is the soul. So then the journey continues through a home up to decluttering the main floor and then decluttering the heart. So you've got your inner and outer pieces. And an example of a chapter here would be decluttering your wardrobe and letting go of comparison. So there's always that inner and outer decluttering piece. Then part 3 of the book, you keep walking up, journeying through the home till you get to the upstairs. So decluttering the upstairs and decluttering the mind. An example of a chapter here would be decluttering sentimental items and letting go of fear. And so the reason I wrote the book this way is because what I realized as I was decluttering is that as I let go of unneeded physical things, I was actually curating 2 homes, an outer home and an inner home. And the first housed my possessions, but the second, the home of my soul, housed God. And we read in 1 Corinthians 6:19, Paul says that our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. He's created an inner home with every human being, within every human being. But I hadn't really thought about my inner home that much really until I started decluttering my outer home. And I started kind of asking myself, do I have space for God's presence within me? And I had this visual of my inner home and God standing at the door knocking. Could I even open that door? Or was it just filled with boxes of inner clutter like worry and comparison and fear? Like, could he even come in? And if he could come in, is he curled up in a corner among all the boxes? Or could he move freely? And I feel like he needs to be able to move freely for us to feel the Holy Spirit's promptings within our lives and to be in tune with God in our day-to-day movements. So I think that our external environment can really serve as a lens to our inner environment. And I think it's important for listeners to think about this, not in a judgmental way, not in a shoulding way, but look around your home and just ask, what is my home environment reflecting back to me? Is it chaos? Is it distraction? Is it peace and calm? And then are those accurate descriptors of your inner home as well? And when they become accurate descriptors of your inner home, I think that's when we are able to communicate or to connect with God more.
What do you say to the person who just wants this, understands that they are overcome with stuff and they know that it's probably a problem, but they look at even starting as just so overwhelming? What do you say to them?
It is a big project if you're looking at decluttering your outer home first. And I do say, people say, well, what do you tackle first? Do you tackle your inner clutter first or your outer clutter first? I say tackle the outer clutter first because that's going to make space for you to have more time to then turn inward and do the inner work. So I would say just get started. I mean, even 15 minutes a day of decluttering, getting up a little bit earlier to declutter makes a big difference over the big picture. So there's a study that shows that when we declutter our homes, we reduce the amount of time we spend on housework by 40%. So if you're spending 10 hours a week on housework, you get 4 hours back. So you're getting a lot more time back in your daily life when you do declutter your home, and then you can use that time to do the inner work, whether that's therapy or journaling or praying or talking with a mentor. Um, there's a lot of things that we could be doing, but a lot of us feel like we don't have the time.
It is another spoke of your wellness. We talk about making time for sleep, which is the most important. We talk about making time for exercise and movement, which is second most important. You have to make time for the decluttering and the organization so that you have more of that time back. And I think it's worth repeating what Julia just said, that if you spend the time up front decluttering and learning to live with less, then those 10 hours that you might spend on housework every single week, you get 4 of them back. Imagine what God could do through you with those 4 extra hours. The way that I have done it over the years is I make a list on my phone. I'm a big list girl of like to-do list, right? But then at the bottom of my to list, I have a like projects list. Like these are the things that I want to get done. And usually that will be like, okay, organize the basement or the shed, like, or this closet or this. And I will try and I'll look in my calendar a month or 2 ahead and I will schedule it. And I'll be like, this is the day that I'm going to do that. This is the day that I'm going to do that. And I will tell you, it's such a payoff of feeling so good once it's accomplished.
Yeah, scheduling it is a great way to do it. And then to take that appointment seriously. So if you have kids, bring in the childcare. It's just like, a doctor's appointment. Take it as seriously as that. And if you're working within the home, can you schedule a 15-minute decluttering break in the morning, or maybe over your lunch break, can you declutter or use that time to schedule when you're going to declutter? So I think when we make it important and we look at our schedule and see when we really can do it and stick to it, we can make it happen.
I'm just going to point out that if someone talking to us right now has 5 children and she can find some time to do this, none of us have any excuses. I know you have a job and I know you have a child and you're caretaking for somebody, but she's got 5 kids and she's found time to declutter. And I'd assume, Julia, as you continue to add to your family and because you have children, that it's not like one and done. Oh, I decluttered and now I'm done. You have to keep doing
You
it.
do have to keep doing it. You have to have systems in place so that your home isn't cluttered in the meantime and that kids are bringing things all over. Then the dishes actually get done, the laundry gets done. You have to have systems. And then you have to have maintenance routines as well. So I like to take 4 weekends out of the year. Sometimes I pair them with the changing of seasons, or you could pair them with, you know, New Year's and spring cleaning or whatever, back to school if you wanted to pair it that way. But put them on your calendar, and those are going to be your maintenance decluttering weekends. And so then you know that that's what you're going to be doing those weekends. And I have to do that. I get so much stuff because so much more stuff to donate because our lives change, what we need changes, and we don't want to keep the stuff that isn't serving us in that season. So it's a lifestyle, really. It's just knowing that um, we're not going to hold on to what doesn't serve us, and we're always questioning what we have in our home. It's living with intention and only bringing things in and only keeping things that are going to support our lives.
How do you get your kids or your family members on board, or do you just do it around them?
No, I definitely make a point to include them. It's a lifestyle for our family for sure. For kids, my main piece of advice for talking to kids and including kids with minimalism and decluttering is that what matters when you talk to them isn't so much what you say to your child, but it's how you say it. So if you're talking about letting go of toys, but you're afraid that it could harm them or upset the child, they're going to sense that. And so you need to work through your own hesitations first so that you can talk to them from a place of assurance and calm. And there's research that shows that kids thrive in simple environments. They do better with less stuff. I mean, if we do better with less stuff, think of how those little brains are going to feel with so much stuff around them that are still developing brains. So the book Simplicity Parenting is a great read to help anyone who's listening really get on board with living with less stuff with kids. Second, I've found that being the decluttering dictator is futile. It does not help. If you're telling your kids, do this, do this, do this, they're going to resist. And so give them ownership in the decluttering process. Kids are naturally generous. And when you can tap into that, they will donate their stuff. They will want to help out other kids. And so what I do for our maintenance decluttering sessions, we have one toy box and I'll put a reusable shopping bag next to it. And I'll just say to our kids, okay, whatever you don't want anymore, go ahead and put it in the bag and I'll take it to a kid who doesn't have toys. We can help them out this way. You guys go ahead and choose what you want to let go of. And then I'll leave the room. And it's funny what they choose. If I was doing it myself, I wouldn't put the same things in the bag as they do. So I like them to be able to have that ownership of it.
That's great. How can all of this lead to better financial health and freedom?
Well, our story, my story definitely shows that it has. We were $40,000 in debt, like I mentioned, and now we're debt free. So at that time when we were facing our debt, I realized I either needed to make more money or spend less of it. And at the time I was a stay-at-home mom, and so that didn't come with a inward cash flow. So I realized I was going to have to spend a lot more intentionally. And it's funny that they've actually done research on this. They've studied this, that when you spend less, you're going to be more financially healthy. But there's a 2003 study by the Journal of Retailing and Consumer Services that found that adopting a minimalist lifestyle can save you a lot of money because minimalists adopt a prudent stance toward consumption. So you're not spending on the frivolous. You're a very intentional spender now. And so minimalism isn't anti-spending, but it's just pro-intentional spending. Shopping isn't a hobby anymore. We're not just throwing stuff toward money because we're trying to keep up with the Joneses. We're not buying things as a status symbol. And you can really break that cycle that's causing a lot of your consumer debt when you have that mindset shift. Another way is a lot of times you're not You don't have a storage unit anymore, so you're going to save money that way. You're not going to buy duplicate items. If you have 7 pairs of jeans, or you just get rid of those 6 and now you just have 1. So you don't need duplicate items of things. If you have one that you love, you can use multi-use items like mason jars, for example. They can be vases, food storage containers, drinking glasses. So when you have one thing that serves multiple purposes, you don't need to go buy a lot of things. And then also owning a smaller home can help. It's a common thing that you see people downsizing once they've decluttered their homes. And we did this after our first year, actually, into minimalist living. We lived in an apartment for 3 years, and that really helped us get rid of our debt because we didn't have a big mortgage anymore. We spent less on utilities. Our home maintenance costs were way lower. So there's a lot of ways once you adopt this lifestyle that you're just not spending as much. And when you do, you're really intentional about it.
What is the difference when we're talking about this between decluttering and then living a minimalist lifestyle? Or are they the same?
No, I don't know if they're the same. I think it depends because you can declutter your home, but if you haven't changed your spending habits, if you're still amassing more and more, you're not really going to get any benefit from it. So you have to also change that inward flow of stuff that's coming into your home. And I think the minimalist lifestyle is the intentional living piece when you become very intentional about what you let back in. Because I've talked to people who they're like, I love minimalism and I got really into decluttering, but then I bought it all back. And here I am again at square one. So I think you can declutter, and that is the work of clearing and making the space. But then the minimalist lifestyle is that intentionality and what we're allowing into our lives. And it doesn't just have to be our stuff, it can be our calendar, it can be our self talk thoughts, our schedule. So it goes very much beyond just our stuff.
Yeah, I think decluttering your calendar is a huge one. I think that we see a lot of that desire for control in how overbooked we make ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned that saying no was a very important thing as I became a minimalist. And I used to commit to all sorts of things. And then I realized, when I say no, I'm giving someone else the chance to step up and say yes. And when I say no, I have a yes that I'm giving to my kids at home or my husband or other things that matter more to me.
So one of the things that when I do keynotes speaking, I talk about moving from stress to rest and how you can live less stressed. And one of the things seems to be kind of intersecting with what you're talking about as well. And I tell people to shop on one day, as opposed to every time we need something in this day and age, we just pick up the phone and go to Amazon or Walmart or wherever it is that you go and you buy it and it's instantly there. And keep a list if you need something, but do all of your shopping, whether it be online or physical stores with doors, one day a week. That means you get time back as well. You're not swinging by Target to pick up something that one of the kids forgot, and you're not, rushing over just to grab this. And you learn to use the things that you have in your home. This is part of what I took away from being a missionary as well, because you couldn't shop. We couldn't go to Amazon. There weren't stores to go to. There was an open air market where you got your food one day a week, and that was it. And I realized how much less stressed we were by not constantly consuming, constantly buying. And then you also end up buying less stuff because if you get to the end of the week and you look at that list, you're like, oh, do I really still need that?
Yep. Exactly.
So I think that that is definitely a piece of being more of a minimalist,
Correct. Yeah,
correct?
I love that tip because if you are trying to change your buying habits, one of the best things you can do is wait. Wait to purchase it. If you've got this, reaction that, oh, I need this and I'm going to buy this, then you are going to buy that. But if you can give yourself 48 hours or, like you said, one designated shopping day, you're going to put space between that thought need and actually you can discern if it is an actual need. And, I like to think if you keep thinking about it for a week, if it's still on your mind and you haven't forgotten about it, then maybe it is something that you need. But yeah, I love that. Just shopping one day to put space in between finding something you want and discerning if you actually need it or not.
And if that seems too hard for you to start with, I also think really, really observing a Sabbath day, which on a Sabbath day, and it can mean in kind of our modern times, we go outside of biblical meaning. It can mean so many different things. It can mean I just don't have appointments or I just don't look at social media. It can mean all of those things, but it can also be one day a week that you literally aren't consuming anything. You're not going to the store. You're not shopping online. So you start kind of backwards where one day a week you stop and then you build up to maybe just one day a week you're buying. And I know that I have so many people who are listening and watching right now who are kind of stopping and scratching their heads because I built my career at QVC. I'm all for shopping. I love shopping. I'm not saying don't buy stuff. I'm just saying be more cognizant of when and how and why.
Yeah, I love that idea of honoring the Sabbath in that way of not making a day of consumption. I don't know if you've read John Mark Comer's book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. So fantastic
Yes.
read. And
So
he talks
good.
about that
So
in
good.
that book. And I forget exactly what he calls it, but it's kind of like this pushback against, the modern materialist world. Like just take that day where you're pushing back against it and you're not going to fall for consuming and shopping because then you do free up your mind for God, connection with Him, relationships around you. I mean, yeah, online scrolling is just going to distract you from what matters on that day.
So true. What do you hope that people take away from your book?
Well, I definitely hope that it raises awareness for people that clutter is causing them stress, that they might not be living their best life because of the state of their home. I hope that it raises awareness for that. But then I also want people to realize more on a spiritual level that what really matters in this life isn't stuff, that they can shift their focus away from the temporary stuff of this life toward heaven and toward the eternal treasures that never perish and fade. And I love what Paul says in 1 Timothy 6:7. He says, "For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it." And we weren't designed to live weighed down by our stuff. We're made for open spaces, for freedom, for abundance. And I'm no finished product for sure, but I do feel called to just give people the tools and the awareness that there's a different way to live. There's a lighter way, a freer way, a better way, and then help coach them along how they can do that.
Everybody is practicing everything, whether we're talking about exercise or weight or sleep or health in this podcast or decluttering or being a minimalist. Nobody wins, oh, perfect human. Like, oh, I hit 64 and I won. I'm the perfect human. I did everything right. Nobody does that. It's always a practice. And even in the practice of trying to declutter or the practice of trying to be a minimalist, you're learning and you're gaining wisdom and you're gaining skills and you're winning. So it is all a practice.
Right, exactly. Yeah, don't think that so one day you're going to decide you're going to be a minimalist and the next day your house is going to look a certain way, right? It's a practice. And even when you do get your home to a place that feels really good, then you add another baby and then you're like, oh, now how do I do this with 5 kids? So yeah, it's definitely all a practice for sure.
So you don't currently live in an apartment or a small apartment now, I would think,
No,
with
we don't,
five.
but we did build a small house. So we intentionally kept things small.
I agree. I'm all for smaller places for sure. What other, and do you have any other health and wellness practices that help you kind of maintain less stress, especially as a mom of so many?
Absolutely. So I have two main practices. One is prayer in the morning. That's the first thing I do. I grab my hot tea, and if it's nice outside, I'll go sit outside in the sunshine and pray. And if it's cold, we live in Kansas City, so it often is, and I'll go in my closet and pray. And I have this happy light that I use that mimics the sunlight. So I'm still feeling like I'm getting some light.
No.
Yeah.
I have one right there in my prayer
Yes.
room. Like it's the first thing I turn on in the morning. And I also have one in my office.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not reaching for the screen. It's the happy lights on and scriptures open. And so that's how I start the day. And then after that, movement is big for me. I'm really into weightlifting right now, but just quick little workouts, nothing huge. I'm not going to a gym. I'm doing this in my closet as well. I love the YouTube channel Nourish Move Love, and she has like 20, 25 minutes, quick, effective workouts for women. And so I've been doing those maybe 5 times a week. And when I don't do those, I walk on the days that I don't do that. So movement, I know is great for my mental health, and I just feel better all day. So I prioritize that for sure. I also, deep breathing is a big thing that I will do then throughout the day. I like to be really aware of, am I breathing or not? Because I feel like that helps reset my nervous system. I won't be triggered as fast with kids if 10 people are asking or ten questions at once. I can take some deep breaths and I can really respond and be, the person who I want to be. So deep breathing helps out a lot. And I'll try to do that. I'll try to pair that with things that I already do, like getting into the car. When I get into the car, I'll do some deep breathing. If I'm sitting down in a certain chair, okay, I'm going to do some deep breathing. If I'm laying down, I take a nap every day, 20 minutes, I'll do deep breathing then too. So that also helps.
And I would think when anybody is going out and decluttering and trying to kind of take away some of the things that we've been talking about, breathing through that as well, not holding your breath during this, because that's going to keep you in that sympathetic fight or flight as opposed to parasympathetic rest and recovery. And I think when you're doing this decluttering, you want to be as restful as possible to make good
Yeah.
decisions.
Absolutely. I love that. Be aware of your breath, but be aware of your self talk too. That's another big one. Like, are you looking around your home telling yourself, this is way too much. I'm never going to have time to declutter my home, even as you're decluttering. Like, I'm doing this, but I'm not really going to be able to finish this project to reach my goals. If you're telling yourself that, I mean, what Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And so I think we really need to look at our thoughts as we declutter as well. Are they truthful? Or are they not? So yes, breathing and then looking at our thoughts as well.
One of the thoughts that I took away that I heard you say somewhere when I was decluttering a drawer the other day, like I said, I've been very inspired and I've started decluttering more things, was looking at something and going, oh, I should keep this just in case, just in case. And I think you said something to the effect of trust that you'll be okay without it. What did you say
Yeah.
in that
When
situation?
you find yourself holding on to something just in case, you really want to tap into trust. And a tool you can use is you can finish the sentence. A lot of times we say, I need this just in case, but we don't finish the sentence just in case what? So I need all 8 of these vases just in case one of them breaks. Have I ever broken a vase before? No. So I can let go of, 7 of them and keep this one that I love. So that's one tool when we're holding on to things just in case. But also, I think we really need to just trust that if we're trying to hold on to something because we want to preserve a memory, we can let God in to invite him into that moment and trust that he is going to help us remember what it is that he wants us to. So trust our memory, let him touch it. Yeah, trust is definitely a big part in letting go.
Wow. It's such a part of our life all the time, that trust. There's so much trust and fear and anxiety that is around this decluttering and living this type of lifestyle, but it's also very mirrored in our lives all the time and everything that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's one thing, and this is what I ask everybody at the end, one simple thing that everyone can do right now to reduce stress?
I can think of a couple, but okay,
Go for it.
sure.
Give me a couple.
So I'll leave you with an outer decluttering tip and an inner one, since that's the way the book is set up. For the outer decluttering tip, one thing somebody could do right now is go declutter the front of your fridge. And the reason I say this is because in that UCLA study, they found that the average home has 52 items on the front of the fridge. 52. And they found that higher fridge density, so more stuff on the front of your fridge, meant more clutter in your home. So there is a direct connection between the two. So if you go declutter your fridge, you can let that be a visual reminder that you are also committed to decluttering your home. So I would just say take everything off of it, maybe leave 1 or 2 things. If you really feel like you need to hang something up, you can even hang things on the inside of a kitchen cabinet. Like that's where I keep my calendar so that I can only see it when I open it and want to. But I think that's a really powerful first step. If you want a quick decluttering win, just go declutter the front of your fridge because there is a connection then between how much you will keep in your home.
That's so great. So you're talking about all the pictures and the coupons and the things like that that we have on there. Well, I'm visualizing mine right now, which is funny. It's not the front of the fridge, it's the
Okay.
side because my husband's like, I don't want stuff on the front. I want on. So I put it on the side. But there's a lot of stuff. I'm going to do that right after we talk.
That's great.
And what's your other one?
The inner decluttering tip is it's this exercise where you write your own 3 sentence eulogy, which sounds kind of odd, but it's super powerful because what it does is it allows you to think about what you want to be remembered for. Like, is it your personality, maybe your sense of adventure, your faith? And you realize that your possessions, your social media stats, those things aren't going to be on the list when at the end of the day, when it's all said and done. And so then you can ask yourself now, like, am I living focused on those things that matter? And if not, how can I live this one life differently? So really start reflecting on what matters most to you through this exercise and then start taking action to build your life more around those things.
So good. I love all of this. I cannot wait for everybody to read your book. We'll obviously have it linked in the show notes. But how can people find you?
So you can find me at my blog, which is richinwhatmatters.com. I've been blogging there for 6 years now, just documenting our family's journey into minimalism. Got a lot of articles about decluttering there that you can find. And then you can read all about my journey into minimalism there and see my online courses too. And my book, Declutter Your Heart and Your Home, How a Minimalist Life Yields Maximum Joy, is available anywhere that books are sold. And then I'm also on Instagram at Rich and What Matters.
Wonderful. So excited. Thank you so much for being here with us. I can't wait for people to learn from you and to get less stressed. Thanks,
Thanks for
Julia.
having me.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help others find the podcast and join our community. Follow me on social media at Kerstin.Lindquist for daily tips and inspiration. And visit my website at www.Kerstin-Lindquist.com to sign up for our newsletter and receive exclusive content. The information provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions that you may have regarding a medical condition. The host of this podcast is a certified health coach and medical researcher, not a licensed medical professional, and the content shared does not constitute medical advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we encourage you to do your own research and consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your healthcare treatment plans. Thank you for joining me on this journey to reduce stress and make room for rest. Remember, you're not alone. Keep coming back, share your story, ask for help, and give yourself grace.